In 1981, and I promise I won't go every year, but in 1981, the legislature passed the Sentencing Reform Act, also known as the SRA, which changed the way that sentencing was done by establishing determinate sentencing for felony offenders effective July 1st, 1984. The SRA eliminated indeterminate sentences and parole in Washington
State. For your leadership in creating a post-conviction sentence review process based not solely on what we feel and also not based solely on what we fear, but based solidly and soundly on what we know, the facts about rehabilitation and reentry. Here's some information I would like you to consider. First, recidivism rates steadily decline after 3 years of incarceration. Now, the lowest point for recidivism is after 15 years. Additional years of incarceration show little impact on post-release behavior. The Model Penal Code, which comes from the American Law Institute, suggests that people in prison should become eligible for review after 15 years and after 10 years for those sentenced as juveniles. That go beyond.
I'm going to go into what this bill does right now. This bill does a couple different things. First, it has a legislative declaration that offender rehabilitation shall be the top priority for the Department of Corrections, and it affirms that research shows that many offenders are able to rehabilitate and reenter the community successfully and be productive members of society. It also says that there's an intent to create an independent review board to review individual post-conviction cases for potential early release.
The number of lower bunks or accessible cells or dialysis units are limited, and our prison population is aging. DOC is projecting over, I think, 800 people over capacity in the next 2 years, with almost 1 in 5 people being over the age of 50. Washington isn't unique in that, but I think the CLO and BPC at Monroe came to this idea of how do we address this population? How do we start to decrease our population while maintaining public safety? And I think this bill is tremendous.
This proposed change requires a very high bar, at least in what I've read. This is not any easy process. Such things as the required supervision till the time of the original sentence having been fulfilled. And I fully support increasing the options that this bill makes possible for people to have consideration for an early
I also
release.
want to say that I think this bill will continue the effort, as the Smarter on Crime movement does as well, is to look at savings in terms of our incarceration and our criminal justice system. I think as we continue to move this, the other thing I want to say is that it's incumbent upon the legislature, upon all of us to, and there are good bills this session and have been and will continue to be, about being smart on crime in terms of what the programs we offer on the inside of our state prison system to build the toolbox of those that are coming out.
There's this overarching thing of mass incarceration in this country, which if you took everyone who applied for a shortened sentence and gave it all to them without asking them a single question, you'd be pretty close to what other countries already have. And that's a reality that makes it important to support any of these things. We have really long sentences.
The idea that we can rehabilitate and bring people back into our communities is a positive step, and we think that's a good thing.
And I had to explain to people and a lot of families, you know, that didn't want those bad guys coming out, that they had to understand that we needed to fight for prison reform because people that are in prison are people. And we need to treat them like people, because if we don't, and they're treated like animals, they'll act like animals when they come out.
People serving lengthy sentences were youth or emerging adults with less than fully developed brains when they were first incarcerated. Neuroscience now tells us that the part of the brain which controls impulsivity and risk-seeking behavior doesn't fully develop until age 23 to 25, which is why our insurance rates go down when we reach age 25.
My son, Willie, was sentenced to an exceptionally long sentence when he was 18 years old. He was sentenced to 96 years in prison, and he's already served 22 years in prison. But recently, this year, in June of 2018, a judge saw Willie for the transformation that he made. He saw Willie as a person and not for the crime, and he gave Willie an exceptional sentence downward and took 65 years off his sentence. So now, instead of Willie dying in prison when he's 114, he'll be home in about 3 years. So I support this bill because the judge at the time of sentencing said that Willie was one of a kind. and that he was extraordinary. I'm his mother, so I do think he's extraordinary. However, he's not one of a kind. There's many, many men and women that need this bill and need this chance, a second
There's a lot
chance.
of programs, rehabilitating programs that are not out there. So he's sort of developed his own walk. And there's a lot of inmates that do the same. They're young, and they have the capability of making these changes, stretching their minds beyond that they never go back to where they were when they were young. And I don't want to say young and dumb, but it can. Once again, I just want to say thank you and keep doing your good work. And I want to say that reform, revision, relooked at for all.
U.S., 1 out of 9 incarcerated people are serving a life sentence. In Washington, that rate is 1 out of 5, or 19.2%. And these statistics don't include the de facto life sentences of 40, 50, or 60 years that don't include the word life. Finally, releasing people who are mature, responsible, and ready to return to their communities will not only save state dollars, this will save people who continue to be imprisoned long after any reasonable purpose for their imprisonment has been served. This waste of human potential is especially apparent when we look around and see previously incarcerated leaders in education, reentry support, and even becoming lawyers themselves, working hard to help others not only survive but thrive upon reentry.
Since my release in 2015, I've graduated from University of Washington Tacoma's Milgard School of Business, and I've had the honor of working alongside some amazing formerly incarcerated leaders, such as Dr. Christopher Beasley, an associate professor at UW Tacoma. I operated as his project coordinator for the Post-Prison Education Research Lab, which is working to optimize prison to college / prison to employment transitions in Washington and across the country.
Being better as far as DOC staff. And this is things that when he's reached out to other individuals that they all speak highly of. So hope, it gives hope. It really does. We need this bill. We need a board here.
I am very hopeful that this discussion is being had, that the possibility of his release may be there prior to 75 and 80 years old, or maybe being too sick and dying in prison.
I'm going to finish in an unusual way and just read one of the letters that I received. As I said earlier, I've received a big packet already of just seemingly random emails that have come my way. But I wanted to read one because it's emblematic of what I think you've said and provides something of a recapping. I write to you today as an African-American woman with a husband in prison. She gives me his name. He was sentenced to 37 years, 17 years ago. I think as a society we have to decide if prison is really about rehabilitation or if we're content with just throwing humans away. Since my husband's conviction, he has been a leader in the Islamic community, continued his education, participated in numerous programs, and is the co-founder of the REACH program. At what point does someone deserve a second chance? What happens when that option isn't even available? Why do we need this bill? Because there are thousands of people languishing in our prisons that want to make a difference in our world, who would have done anything and everything to prove to themselves, their families, and society as a whole that they are worthy, and the opportunity of that pursuit is denied them.